Hey guys, I'm Charlie, and this is my channel WorthyTube. Today I'm discussing my book, The Undeniable God, A Simple Defense for Christianity, and more specifically, I wanted to talk about the weird Old Testament laws, because I know there's a lot of confusion around them, and people just have their Google educations and it makes some weird assumptions, so it's important that we have an understanding of these things. So I hear so many people listing these laws as a reason why a person shouldn't believe in the Bible. Well, the problem is that they're misunderstanding what these laws meant in the culture in their day, in the historical context, and therefore they don't understand their application. Just generally speaking, most of these laws had to do with the pagan religions around the time of the Jews when they were wandering through the desert as they made their way to the Promised Land. So it was essentially God's way of saying, don't worship these pagan gods. That's essentially what a lot of these passages in Scripture have to do with. So the first one worth discussing is don't sow two different types of seed as mentioned in Leviticus 19:19. The point of this was because the pagan nations at the time would sow two different kinds of seed together because they believed these two seeds would mate and produce a good crop. So essentially it involved pagan fertility gods and things of that nature. And the true reason behind the law was really to not give into a form of pagan worship that was going on at the time. So another command is don't make clothing from two different kinds of material. Leviticus 19:19. This is really referring to the materials used for sacred religious purposes, like the lower cover of the tabernacle, the curtain to the most holy place, and the priest's clothing. That's essentially what they're talking about. So when they said making clothing out of two different kinds of material, they knew what they were talking about. So therefore, the idea was for people to regard these things as special or holy instead of making them common as a means to make them less special or significant. It'd be like a woman showing up to a friend's wedding in her own wedding dress in hopes of upstaging the bride, right? That would be a real jerk move. In the same way, people who would have made clothing out of these things would have done so, would have been purposely desecrating these special things, and that ain't cool. So another one worth mentioning is don't trim the sides of your head or beard, as mentioned in Leviticus 19:27 and Deuteronomy 14:1. This was forbidden because the pagans would do this as a means to mourn for the dead in relation to their pagan religion. So once again, we see the real concern here is to not participate in the pagan religions, but to stay true to the one true God. Something else worth commenting on are the food restrictions placed on the Jews. Some people say that because Christians don't follow these laws, they are not living as the Bible commands us to live, but that is not true for a bunch of different reasons. A very big element to the old covenant God had with Israel was to refrain from becoming unclean by participating in the pagan religions around them. Israel was set apart by God to bring about salvation for humanity, and therefore everything evolves around this, even the food that they ate. That is why some food was considered unclean, because even the very act of eating clean food was a means of reminding the Jews that they were set apart by God and were meant to bless the world. So it wasn't so much a moral thing as much as it was a symbolic religious thing. Just as Israel was set apart, so the food they ate was set apart. Now it seems that God chose certain foods to be clean by how they were created in three different categories. So some animals lived in water, some on land, and some spent a lot of their time flying around in the air. The animals that were overlapping in these categories were considered unclean. So an example would be like a pelican or a gull, because these birds inhabit the water and the sky. Other animals that were abnormal looking or predators that had contact with blood were also considered unclean. Again, it's not that there was anything particularly wrong with these animals, but it was a way to symbolize God's covenant relationship with Israel. So keep in mind that these food restrictions were a temporary thing that was a means of preparing for the new covenant. It was part of Israel staying faithful to God in the Old Testament. The Jews knew the Old Covenant was temporary and that they were waiting for a new covenant with God, as expressed in Jeremiah 31 and Ezekiel 36. Now, because Jesus has come and set up a new covenant, we are no longer required to follow the Old Covenant, as mentioned in Ephesians 2 and many other places. However, I will say that I think it's worthwhile to learn about the Old Testament covenant and its regulations. I myself have been challenged to do so, and I think knowing more about this will help you understand the life of Christ and have a better context for the Bible as a whole, even the New Testament, cool stuff like that. So I definitely think it's worthwhile to learn about that and not just kind of leave it behind. It has its applications even for today. So guys, thank you so much for watching this video. You can check out the link so you can get a copy of my book in both digital and print form. Check it out. And there's also a link to our website where you can see free blogs, other videos, a fact sheet, 5 simple reasons that prove that Christianity is the one true religion. And also you can check us out on Facebook and Twitter. Share this video with a friend, guys. Thanks.